Hello. Welcome everybody to today's second in the series of being anchored in wellness. And I am Dr. Deb Pinels. I'm the medical director for behavioral health and forensic programs at MDHHS. And today I am going to be focusing on emotional intelligence in times of transition. Now, just a couple of housekeeping things before I begin and as people are settling in. First of all, make sure you're settled in. This is your half hour of wellness. So just take a deep breath, settle in, get yourself comfortable. This is really for you. The leadership really has been recognizing that we want to do more to help support everybody who's working so hard in their days to help the people of Michigan. This meeting is being recorded so that people will have access to it later, and people who weren't able to attend will be able to watch the recording. And also, we really want this to be as interactive as possible. Sometimes that's difficult in large groups, but remember that we're looking for interaction. So feel free to use the chat. It should be open if you have comments, and there's going to be a couple of times where I'm going to ask you questions and we're going to want to see responses. And then people will be able to speak at different points during this talk if you're feeling comfortable with that. But the chat is always available. So welcome everybody, and let's begin with the next slide. All right, so like I said, we're talking about emotional intelligence in times of transition. You know, we're all going through times of transition, and frankly, once we realize in life that life is a series of changes, we know that we're always in some kind of transition. But it does seem like these days particularly feel like we're transitioning. And that's what we've been hearing a lot. That's what a lot of people have been expressing in social circles and in work circles. And so what we want to do for today's talk is help you recognize emotional triggers during these times of uncertainty. I'm going to talk a little bit about active listening and empathy as tools for team stability to help you work better together, and then also how to name and normalize emotions without derailing productivity, without sort of name calling, but really just realizing that we're all dealing with different things at different times. So maybe I could start with a little bit of a chat question and say, you know, I'm sure people have heard about these triggers, and I'll talk more about that, but can anyone think of a situation where, and you don't have to give us too much personal information, but where you felt, you know, potentially triggered about something, and how you maybe coped with that? So if you want to put stories in the chat, that would be great, and I'll react to them as we go. I can tell you for myself, I was saying before when we were in the green room, I had just come from a stressful meeting. And the stressful meeting brought up all sorts of reminders of things that I have to get done. And so that was really a trigger for me because you know, that feeling of being behind. So put in the chat, let's take a moment and see. I don't see if the chat has people chatting. Just some things that people might be experiencing. More duties coming my way during staff reduction. Take it one day at a time. Yep, that's similar to what I was feeling today. A lot of people are giving the thumbs up. Anything else people want to? Getting poor sleep. Yep, yep. Past toxic workplace. Oh yeah, I had a time when I had a really bad boss and it was so painful. So I get really sensitive to that. Being reassigned to a different job, having to take it or face a demotion, that's really challenging. I remember one time I had a staff reports and one of my staff reports was removed from me without my knowing it, and I didn't know what was happening. That was so stressful. Potential litigation for cases I'm advising on, lack of timely communication leading to confusion. I use fidget tools, awesome. News stories about all the Medicaid cuts, all of the above, laugh out loud. Traffic, as the holiday seasons, I always get anxious. Yeah, lots going on in the holiday season. All right, so we all understand these emotional triggers, and they can be worse during times of uncertainty. So keep giving each other examples, and also think about times that you listened and showed empathy as tools for team stability. And we'll go on to the next slide. So uncertainty and emotions. We know that during times of uncertainty, our stress levels are really high. And I don't know how many of you have pets, but when you have a pet that feels anxious, the pet perks up. You can tell like a dog's tail might be in a different direction. The ears on the cat might be in a little different direction. Same thing for us as humans. We don't have tails and we can't necessarily wiggle our ears. But when we have stress, we may be giving off signals, those hormones of stress, and that can create more stress in the workplace. And so these things can show up. Increased stress from the differences for each other and from the uncertainty of what we're facing itself. So it can create a whole environment. And we're very anthropologically, we are very interconnected. So when one person is stressed, it can create this other stressful situation. I used to say at the family dinner table, if somebody came in grumpy, that they were bringing like a little toxic strain to the family dinner. And so we needed to kind of deal with how to diffuse the one grumpy person so that everybody didn't become grumpy, and really do it in a supporting and nurturing way. And so we really want to keep the workplace stable. We want to help you think of tools to help yourself stay stable and think about how can we each individually bring ourselves into wellness so that we can help foster the collective strength of each other. Because once we bring peace, okay, we took people off mute and now we might need to mute people. Okay, great. We want to think about how we can each give each other strength in the same way we could give each other stress. We want to think about how do we bring ourselves into strength and peace so that we can bring that to the table. Next slide. So what is emotional intelligence? So emotional intelligence really is defined as the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathically. And so it involves managing emotions, both mostly our own, the ability to perceive emotion. So what is this other person bringing to the table? And maybe I need to back down because they're bringing some stress to the table. The ability to understand emotions, like that this person is feeling something and maybe it's not about me, maybe this is just what they're dealing with, and then using emotions to help foster togetherness, foster interpersonal relatedness in a way that leads to personal and professional success. So really thinking about that. And I'd like you to take some time again in the chat about where you think your strengths are in perceiving emotions, managing emotions, understanding emotions, and using emotions. We all have certain strengths in this area, and we all have places where we can learn. Next slide. So to help foster emotional intelligence, and I want to just see what people are saying. Anything people want to say about where they see their strengths in identifying emotions in themselves or helping step back when they see emotions in a colleague. Put some answers in the chat before I go on to naming emotions. Somebody said that Dion said that perceiving emotions is an area of strength. Active listener and reframing what I heard you say, perceiving body language. Great. Those are really great examples. Anything else? Self-awareness, being aware, like, oh, I'm bringing something in from this other meeting. Any strengths disappear when I'm stressed. That's very common, very common. It's partly why we want to have this conversation. Not assuming it's personal, putting yourself in their shoes, right? Keeping my emotions under control when there's tension. Using emotions and having empathy. Yeah, like for me, I have some things in my life that are really very traumatic things, and that sometimes I experience something that has nothing to do with anybody in the room, but I'm reminded of something that happened. And so sometimes I might have a reaction. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So how do we name emotions? Trying to give grace. I love that. Mindfulness. Okay, next slide. So it's really interesting when we think about emotions. Emotions represent feelings that actually can be grouped in different ways. And there's been different researchers that have studied emotional expression. And the research on responses, people watch videos of people showing different emotions, and you can look at emotions. What the researchers say is there's like about 27 or more different groupings. So admiration, adoration, aesthetic appreciation, amusement, anger, anxiety, awe, awkwardness, boredom, calmness, confusion, contempt. That's a lot of, the list goes on about what are different emotions that humans experience. And the more we understand the language of emotions and how emotions can be sorted out, the more emotionally intelligent we can become. Next slide. So one of the very classic ways that people think about this is what's called Plutchik's emotion wheel. And I'd like to hear, a show of whether maybe people can do signals, reactions, if you've heard of this emotion wheel. And essentially what it boils down to, a lot of people are saying they've heard of it. Oh, look at that. That's so fun looking at all those thumbs up. That makes me happy. So now I'm going to look at joyful. So I'm feeling joyful. I feel joyful. And when I really drill it down, it makes me feel energetic and stimulated. That's kind of the way I would describe it when I saw all those thumbs up come up. And somebody has this wheel hanging up in their house. And it's really helpful to sort of sort out, like, I'm feeling some kind of rumbling in my tummy. What is the rumbling? Like, is the rumbling scared? Is it anger? Is it sadness? And then how do we separate out from that general feeling into these other things? Or you may do it backwards. Like, I'm feeling really irritable now. Why am I feeling irritable? Is it because I'm feeling angry? Is it because I'm feeling hurt? Where is that emotion coming from? So anyone who has not seen this, yeah. How many people have not seen this? I'd love to see that people say that they have not seen this. Several people have not seen it too. Yeah. So you can look this up. It's a very common thing. I remember when I first learned about it, it was very helpful for me because, again, I was going through some very upsetting circumstances and I couldn't really figure out what I was even feeling. And it was a really good way for me to think about naming that emotion to then actually be able to address it. Next slide. There's another way that we use to describe emotions if you're not a verbal person is we use facial expression sometimes. And this can help, although some people, especially people, with certain neuropsychiatric challenges or neurodevelopmental challenges, like people who might be, in the autism spectrum may have a harder time with facial expressions. But what we do know is that we're very perceptive to facial expressions generally, and that we can look at these and then describe how we're feeling. Like I might say today, giving this talk, I relate most to the top left happy person. But again, I was really stressed before with my meeting, so I would probably put myself in the bottom right as being the frustrated person. This is another way to sort of put an emotion picture up on your office wall and say, how am I feeling today? What am I feeling before I go into this meeting? And how do I get myself to feel the most energized? So this is another great way of looking at these emotions and naming emotions and depicting emotions. The emotion wheel is easily downloadable. And yes, these slides will be available to you just to answer some questions in the chat. Okay, next slide. So we have heard, okay, I'm going to do another poll. How many people have heard about triggers? Raise your thumbs. Oh, I love those crowds. Awesome. Okay. Okay. And how many people have heard, okay, wait, thumbs down. Let's wait. How many people have heard about glimmers? A few. Not as many. Okay, so I'm going to talk about triggers and glimmers and what to do with them. Next slide. So emotional triggers are really fascinating. These are environmental, interpersonal, sensory, or cognitive situations that spark sudden, intense, negative reaction. And they vary from person to person. Now, it's kind of common language now to say, oh, that's a real trigger, or trigger warning, I'm about to tell you something that I know is going to upset you. And so that does come up a lot. And so triggers are sometimes more commonly known, but they really stem from prior experiences, especially traumas and micro traumas, like having an embarrassing experience as a child, or stressors and sensitivities that have been passed through generations. I come from a family of immigrants, so I have certain sensitivities related to really even what my grandparents may have experienced with their immigration story. And I have not heard that the word trigger is no longer appropriate, although I'm always happy to learn new things. The literature really does talk about these psychological triggers. And I see LP, you have a question or a comment. Do you want to come off and tell us what your comment is? Okay, you took your hand down. Put it in the chat if you'd like. But just realize that one person's trigger may not be, oh, because it's on a gun. Yeah, that's true. That we try and avoid firearms related words. But in terms of this emotional trigger, that still is the common parlance. I haven't, but you could call it an emotional stimulus if you don't like the word trigger. That it's really, the point is that it's, you react to something, but it's your brain reacting to something that may not be what's actually in the room. It may be based on your past experiences. Next slide. So, and they can arise at any time due to any stimulus. So I could have, some weird thing like about peanut butter, and then remember how my dog who passed away loved peanut butter, but to somebody else, it's just peanut butter. But to me, it's this really emotional thing. And so others may not understand what happened. As your demeanor changes, you may stiffen up, you may be irritable, you may actually even lose your temper, you may cry. And so times of stress make people more vulnerable to triggers. For example, when you're in dealing with grief, and grief can be in the acute stages or even years after, where something can cause you to have trigger. I had a period of time where certain words triggered me because they reminded me of a certain situation. At times of change and times of vulnerability, uncertainty, and worries, at times that you have mood shifts, you might be more sensitive. When you're sleepless, you might be more sensitive to those environmental stimuli that make you think that something's going on that's not really going on. And so for the outsider, they may see a sudden reaction that seems like not consistent with what's happening in their world, but in your world, in your internal world, something else is happening. And sometimes until we become more aware of these, we're not even aware of what's going on. We just shift and suddenly we're reacting. Next slide. So what do we do? Ways to cope with these emotional stimuli. I'll just use that word since somebody mentioned that word trigger might be disturbing to them. So external approaches. One is notice with empathy, like, hey, I noticed you shifted. Is everything okay? That's a really good neutral way to observe and take a step back and not take what their reaction is personally. One of the challenges is sometimes when somebody responds, they respond in a way, and then the person hearing the response takes it personally, so then they respond, and then suddenly you get this, like, what I call the ladder effect, where the escalation just gets worse and worse. So just taking a step back and saying, hey, you shifted, are you okay? Take some space, like, you know what, I need to take some space from this person who's, and then also identifying angels in the crowd, like, who is my safe person that I can look at, make eye contact with, that can help me externally calm myself. And then also setting up calming environments. Lately, my home office, I've been really setting up this really nice, I try and keep my desk cleaner. I sometimes will light a candle on the side, just create a calming environment for myself to create external approaches. Internal approaches, are things that we do, self-awareness, learn what our emotional sensitivities are, learn how to do breath work, learn how to do mindfulness and shift our focus, and then do positive self-talk, like, yeah, I know that this peanut butter is upsetting to me, but this is not what's happening. I'm still safe. I'm good. I loved my dog, that kind of thing. And then also behavioral activation. If we're really stressed, get up, walk. I did before this, I did a little shake. You know how like dogs shake when they get out of the pool? Sometimes when we're upset about something, you can literally shake it off and move your body and try and shake off what's upsetting you. Next slide. And then also pull for glimmers. So glimmers, there's a lot of research now looking at these glimmers, which are the opposite, if you will, of what would be the emotional stressors. And that includes, it could be anything for you. Like for me, one of the glimmers that I saw was all those thumbs up. It shows me people are listening, they're paying attention. So I felt like a little lovely moment. Somebody puts their hand on their heart. So name what you do if you, or glimmers that you see. Some people say, oh, that moment when sunshine is on my face, that's a beautiful moment. I was just talking to somebody else who said when the sunshine's on their face, they sometimes are emotionally upset because they used to be in a situation where they walked with someone who had a sun sensitivity. So like, again, it can be different things for different people. But a moment of sunshine, a smile, the laughter of a child, a wonderful sip of coffee. I have my coffee right next to me, a moment of a hug. And if you don't have someone to hug, just giving yourself a hug. And then identifying glimmers can help us all achieve more wellness. So somebody can put in the chat, a high five. Yep. And I love holding my own hand when I'm upset. And I'm sitting in my office, I say, you know what? I can hold my own hand. It's kind of like the Miley Cyrus, I can buy myself flowers. So giving yourself little glimmers. My 5-year-old granddaughter is the brightest glimmer. I love it. Hearing a song that you really like, that's another glimmer. Laughter is my glimmer. So again, we don't only want to think of the negatives of the things that stimulate us in a negative way, but we want to think about the things that can bring us joy, positivity, and warmth. And safety, really, because this is all about the way these emotional stimuli work. Our bodies are geared to survive. And so when something upsets us, it's like a threat to our safety. And so what we want is something that helps us feel safe and grounded. I love it. My faith, groceries, buying all the groceries, the smell of clean laundry. You guys are awesome. A good joke. Awesome. Okay, next slide. All right, so here's where in our remaining few minutes, I want to either continue to look at the chat, but I'd really love for a brave soul to tell us an experience where maybe they felt in the workplace something about what I've talked about, where they sort of saw that they were having an emotional response and they needed to take care of themselves, and or something where they felt really proud of themselves for bringing positive emotion to the workplace, something where a glimmer helped them. I'd love for a brave soul to share with their peers some story. See if we can get a volunteer. It's intimidating in the group, but I know some of you have a good story. Okay, Catherine, brave soul.
I think this counts. So recently we had some rules pass, and when I let all of the people that this affected know, I was told by many people, you know, where's this coming from? We didn't know about this. And I had gone above and beyond any requirement of letting people know. Like I had literally emailed all of these people, like when they could get their word in. I had people in our work group, and it was really frustrating for people to act like they've never heard of this, but I've gone so far above and beyond in making sure that everybody did know. So that was just like instant frustration. And like, I didn't feel like I failed because I know I did everything I possibly could, but it was really frustrating in that moment.
I can totally hear that and relate to it. And so then the question is, how do you deal with that frustration? The other thing I would say is, you know, in my experience, and we know this from the literature, when people are highly stressed, their cognition shuts down. And so if they're stressed about this information, it's possible that they're not retaining information you told them. So it's possible that both are true, that you did everything you could and you did even better than anyone else in the world would have done informing people. But because the news was stressful, people might not have registered or might not be able to recall, or might need it said in a different way. And it takes sometimes several. So I think in that situation, I totally applaud your having done what you think you needed to do to inform people. And I respect and honor your frustration at feeling unheard and unseen in that effort. And I'm really glad you shared that story, because I think everyone can relate to it. And now the question is, how do you keep bringing forward positive emotions to keep supporting a team that, you know, sometimes you might not feel appreciated by. And I think that's a very common experience in the workplace. So I really appreciate your sharing. There's another hand up that I want to give time to. AQ. I'm not sure who that is. I can't read the name. Who's AQ? Kwan. I can't see it. Amanda Kwan. You want to share with us something?
It does look like maybe they're having some technical difficulties. Did you want to put something in the chat? I apologize. I
Oh,
don't
Mike's
think the
not working.
mic-
Yeah, put it in the chat, Amanda. All right. I'm sorry the technical difficulties didn't work. Feel free to email later. I'm going to move to the next slide if you can put it in the chat. Oh, there was a situation where I walked in on a coworker talking about me. Oh, that's really rough. That is really a rough situation, and definitely, frankly, can be emotionally stressful just for what it is. It can also bring up other times when that's happened in life, because we've all had that happened in life. And so the question is what you did, how I had to choose to not get involved and continue to treat her the same. And I think that's really good. And whether there's a safe space later to work with her or the person and the manager. And then also hear the truth in what she was saying. That's really, really powerful that you were able to do that. But also, you know, if there were opportunities to talk from the personal experience and say, and put in a language to the emotion, like I felt embarrassed, I felt ashamed, I felt belittled, not you did this and you, how dare you, but I felt this. And I really am a person that wants feedback, and I would really value if you want to give me feedback directly in the future, if that's a kind of conversation that's doable for you, that might be helpful to kind of heal. Because what we have with these kind of situations, when people talk about each other, yeah, and people can hear certain sides, people dig into their position. So it's always, oh, good, you're better terms now. It's always good to sort of wait till the emotions diffuse, because again, people can't process when they're highly emotional, and then be able to talk about individual experience. All right, let's move on to, thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing, and I'm so glad you're on better terms. But that's a very common experience. And again, I recommend trying to take it on the chin, take a deep breath, figure out how to manage it, name the emotions for yourself, and then come back later and try and work through honest communication in a non-aggressive way to help do that. I'm not always good at that, but it's really an important skill. All right, let's go to the next slide. So what's resonating with you right now? And any questions or comments as we're wrapping up? Let's go to the next slide. Please put your comments in the chat. As I close this out, remember, vulnerability is a strength. So Amanda's story is a really, and the other story we heard from Catherine, these sharing those stories is a sign of strength, to be able to talk about things and then really be able to think through the micro strategies that can help reset stress. Daily habits build resilience. So the daily habit of naming your emotions, coming into work with knowing how you're feeling, setting your intention for the day, even setting your intention for a meeting. Like I set my intention for delivering this talk before I started. And change, even though it's challenging and brings stress, it also brings opportunities for growth. And so this, anchored in wellness really is a call to action. So choose one micro strategy or habit to try today, whether it's naming your emotions, identifying some potential stressors like triggers, or even finding glimmers that can help you each day to make your day a little bit easier and bring some positive energy into the workforce and into your home life. Next slide. Remember, you have help available to you through your employee service program. That's always there for you. And next slide. Thank you for joining us. This is a series. You're going to see the next one. Jessica Lundy is going to be leading. So really appreciate everybody's time and energy today, and go forth and have a wonderful, wonderful day.